Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Montclair, and good morning. My name is Markus Grae Hauck. I serve as the Director of Music Ministries for this congregation, and it's good to be with you both virtually from wherever you're watching and in this space. If you are in this space, we ask two things. One is that you check your cell phone and make sure it's in airplane mode and not connected to the Wi-Fi here, because that might affect the bandwidth and the streaming of the service. And we want to make sure that people watching the service from elsewhere have a good experience and don't experience any lag or any bumps in that. The other thing is that we ask you to not sing along with our hymn leaders, but you are welcome to hum and move around in any way that you see fit. Dance, rock, sway, clap, all those things are welcome. I'm joined today by Glenn Rombough on guitar, and our hymn leaders are Ami Brabson and Avron Stoloff. And we begin with We Gather Together. Oh. And of course, the ever-shy Rev Scott on drums.
whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever age, ability, history, identity, gender, or sexual orientation, you are welcome to bring your full self here. I am Laura Anthony. I use all pronouns. Grounded in faith, we come together to nurture the soul, inspire hope, and bring into being a more just and loving world. Today's service, Unlocking the Power of Covenant, explores the nature and history of the agreements we make to one another. Contrasting covenant with contracts, we will reflect on how we are best served living in covenant, assuming and endeavoring to remain in right relationship as we strive together to live more fully into our mission. Joining us to offer pastoral support from our pastoral care team for our virtual service is Joel Naftelberg. Joel will introduce himself in the chat. Please reach out if you wish to connect. And for our in-person service, Janet Schiller is here from our pastoral care team. Janet is in the back now, waving and wearing a gold stole. Hey, Janet. Yeah. Please reach out to Janet to connect. Our COVID protocols include social distancing and that we be masked and, as possible, vaxxed. We welcome all and realize that there is not a vaccine available for children under 12, so we have established a space in our sanctuary for families with young children. And we have restricted congregational singing, asking instead that we hum along while our hymn leaders sing. And I think it was just as good just then. That's right. Connection Cafe follows our service virtually via Zoom and multi-platform from our Alliance Room at 11:30 a.m. Please see your This Week at UUCM bulletin for other important information. And now we welcome Rev Anya to recognize and invite us to covenant with the Social Justice Coordinating Team chairs.
Recognize their role. There's the microphone. I was wondering where that was. We'd like to welcome the Social Justice Coordinating Team leaders to come forward as we recognize their role and commit to supporting their, which is our, ministry. And we invite you to check out their upcoming event on Monday, tomorrow via Zoom. Look at your This Week at UUCM announcements for more information and to engage in the Monday night Justice Hour. So justice is not something that some of us do. Justice is a commitment we make, interwoven with all the other commitments that we make as a congregation. Therefore, the Social Justice Coordinating Team leaders are called to engage all of us, visitors, friends, members, all ages, all abilities, in the work of making our world a bit more just. And this is our social justice leader, Maria Tao, and Eileen Birmingham is here as well.
We envision putting our Unitarian Universalist faith into intersectional action. We envision direct service for individuals, communities, and ecosystems victimized by unequal power relations. We envision the growth of our members of diverse identities in their capacity to engage justice action.
And the Social Justice Coordinating Team has this as their mission: to strategically leverage the whole congregation's power.
That means two things. One, that we are more powerful, more capable of enacting justice the more of us who are involved. And two, that we are better equipped to act when all of us commit to common goals. We are presently working out our strategy, listening and learning from you. When we come to you with a justice initiative, we hope you will be willing to listen and learn from us so that we might collectively leverage our power to, in whatever way we are able, bring an end to systemic inequalities.
So, social justice coordinating team leaders, are you prepared to work in collaborative, compassionate, and dedicated manners to bring an end to systemic inequalities?
Yes, we are.
Congregation, are you prepared to work with us in a collaborative, compassionate, and dedicated manner to bring an end to systemic inequalities? If so, please say, yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
And if you're joining with us virtually, I welcome you to write yes or yes we are into the chat. This is our sacred commitment. This is our covenant. This is our charge. Thank you to the leaders.
Ours is a covenantal community. We have just honored this reality with this ritual of covenanting with our social justice coordinating team members. When we come together, it is understood that while we may not necessarily share common beliefs, we do share a common covenant, a commitment to come together in service to the beloved community. Let's light our chalice as our chalice lighting affirmation is shared. Let us open our senses to take in beauty. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another.
Here is our time for all ages. I'm Rev Scott Samler Michael, he, him, his, and I'm joined by Rev Anya Samler Michael, today's liturgist Laura Anthony, as well as Judith Hogan, our awesome director of religious education, and Markus Grae Hauck, director of music ministries. Pardon. One time, before there were any people walking around this valley, there were bear people, and they had an agreement with the salmon. The salmon would come upriver every fall, and the bears would acknowledge this and take what they needed. This is the way it was with everything. Everyone lived by certain agreements and courtesies, but the salmon people and the bear people had made no agreement with the river. The river had been overlooked. No one thought making an agreement with a river was even necessary. Well, turns out that it was. One autumn, the river pulled itself back into the shore trees and refused to let the salmon enter from the ocean. Whenever they would try, the river would pull back and leave the salmon stranded on the beach. There was a long argument, a lot of talk, and finally the river let the salmon enter. But when the salmon got up into this country where the bears lived, the river began to run in two directions at once. North on one side, south on the other, roaring, heaving white water and rolling big boulders up onto the banks. Then the river became suddenly still. The salmon were afraid to move. The bears stood behind the trees, peeking out. The river said in the middle of all this silence that there had to be an agreement that included them. No one could just do anything, whatever they wanted. You can't just take someone, even a river, for granted. So for several days they spoke about it. And the salmon shared who they were and where they came from.
I am the great salmon from the Pacific Northwest.
And the bears spoke about what they did and the powers that they had been given.
I am a great brown bear with mighty paws and a mightier appetite.
And the river spoke about its agreement with the rain and the wind and even the crawfish.
We are agreed. We are all one.
Everybody said what they needed and what they would give in return. Then a very odd thing happened. The river said that it loved the salmon.
I love you, salmon. You love me? I love you too, salmon.
No one had ever said such things like this before. No one had taken the chance. It was an honesty that pleased everyone. And it made for a very deep agreement among them all, an agreement we might call a covenant today. They were able to reach a mutual understanding about their shared obligations, and everyone could go about their business in their own way. And this remains unchanged to this day. So when you feel the presence of the river shuddering against your legs, you are feeling the presence of all these agreements.
When you feel the presence of the river
Shuddering against your legs, you are feeling the presence of all these agreements.
That was fun. Called to find depth in our days and reverence in this hour, we seek a gentle meditation, a deep reflection, an ardent prayer, each as we are called, and yet all together. And we enter into this space by hearing the lamentations, the requests, the remembrances of our community. Let us hear one another to heal one another. We light this first candle for Francesca Elms, who is grieving the loss of her brother Chris, while celebrating the gift of his life. Please hold Chris's family, and especially Francesca, in your heart and your prayers during this time of loss. Amy Haynes lights this candle of grief for her father, who passed away in his sleep on Sunday morning last. All of her family members and his close friends had a chance to say goodbye and are relieved his suffering is over. May he rest. Judy Reinerson lights a candle of sorrow for her friend Ben Parks, who died suddenly at home in Summit, New Jersey last weekend. Ben was such a nice guy, Judy shares. Please keep his wife and sons in your thoughts and prayers. Shannon Gattens lights a candle of support for her friend, Perla Mondriguez, whose brother Carlos passed away suddenly of a heart attack at age 48. John Sincock and family light a candle of sorrow and share, "My father passed away peacefully in his sleep after a long battle with emphysema and lung cancer. Our family is comforted at his idea of heaven, which included his beloved mother and sister and our many family beagles surrounding him." Ami Brabson and Andre Brower light a candle of sorrow for their dear friend, Katie Jones, who lost her son Robert on Wednesday the 20th from complications due to COVID-19. His family feels such sorrow for his loss and for their inability to convince him to get the COVID-19 vaccination. Please keep them all in your prayers. And we light a final candle for the joys and the sorrows that are deeply felt but have not been spoken aloud. And this light also shines for the young ones among us whose beautiful voices are a prayer themselves, lifting into our space. May we hold the silence or the beautiful voices of prayer that lift up as this silence holds us. We'll hold for about 30 seconds. We will miss you, dear one. May our listening inspire acts of love. Please continue with me now in this space of prayer or meditation as you are moved. I'd like to begin with a quote from the spiritual leader Parker Palmer. So Parker Palmer has this to say. Parker Palmer shares, "Jewish teaching includes frequent reminders of the importance of a broken, open heart. As in the Hasidic tale, a disciple asks the Rebbe, 'Why does Torah tell us to place these words upon your heart? Why does it not tell us to place these holy words in our hearts?' The Rebbe answers, 'It is because all as we are, our hearts are closed, and we cannot place the holy words in our hearts. So we place them on top of our hearts, and there they stay until one day the heart breaks and the words fall in.'" God of our understanding, Spirit of life and love that we know, that moves through us. There are times when our hearts break and all we feel is the struggle and the pain. May our hearts, when they break, not just break, but break open. So that when the grief of the world that so many of us feel so deeply right now, when that grief threatens to steal us from ourselves and one another. Instead, may our hearts be broken open, so we can feel more deeply our connection to our neighbors, the truth that we all suffer and struggle in life. And may our hearts be broken open, not only so we feel this pain, but so when joy comes, my goodness, it can set us on fire. God of our understanding, Spirit of life and love, that which breaks our hearts open, that which opens us to the blessings of this world. We say, Amen.
I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you.
We stand. We stand with and by one another. 80% of what you offer will care for our congregation, and 20% will support our October and November recipient Perinatal Equity Foundation. The Perinatal Health Equity Initiative eliminates healthcare disparities in Black infant and maternal health. Founded by Dr. Natasha Davis, this nonprofit empowers Black and brown women and their children in Essex County and New Jersey. Perinatal Health Equity Initiative also participates in advocacy, education, and research to further their work encompassing justice, equity, and compassion. You can text UUCM plate and your amount to 73256 to give. Mail us a check with Perinatal Equity Foundation in the memo, or simply place your gift in the offering basket. Ushers, please come forward. All of your gifts are worthy, and they are all received with love. Our reading is from Unlocking the Power of Covenant, published by the UUA's Commission on Appraisal 2021. Since 1934, our denomination's Commission on Appraisal has produced reports meant to honestly evaluate our processes, recognize trends, suggest ways to improve congregational life, and build more accountable communities. Their latest study is titled Unlocking the Power of Covenant, published just this year, and our reading comes from this report. Covenant versus contract. A contract is an agreement with specific terms between two or more persons or entities in which there is a promise to do something in return for a valuable benefit. Contracts are made for a limited period of time, involve the specific actions of offer and acceptance, and are intended to protect the interest of the parties. Covenants, however, are open-ended and intended primarily to protect relationships by establishing processes for the peaceful resolution of differences or conflicts. In a contract, the signers agree to uphold their ends only as long as the other parties uphold theirs. With a covenant, all parties agree to hold up their ends regardless of whether another keeps theirs. A violation of covenant breaks it, but does not destroy it. The remaining parties have a responsibility to continue abiding by what was agreed to while seeking to restore the covenant. Covenants exist to maintain, manage, and restore relationships.
Swimming in the stream together.
am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since the beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Thank you, Amy, for that rendition of that Pat Humphries song. We stand balanced at the brink of wisdom, washed by the very same rain. These are good things to remember as we live our lives in community, knowing that we all have struggles, we all have challenges to overcome. And today we're exploring the power of covenant. Covenant is that which upholds us all, like the river in our time for all ages holds the salmon. Covenant is part of the water upholding us as we swim towards our vision of beloved community. In a faith like Unitarian Universalism, where we do not command members to pledge allegiance to statements about what God is or what God is not, covenants guide our interactions, proclaiming our commitment to be in relationship, showing how to sustain healthy relationship, and how to restore relationship when we inevitably miss the mark or break covenant, which we will. The etymology of the word covenant, it comes from the Latin. It helps us understand it a bit. Con, or with, and venire, to come. So covenant is an invitation to enter into a sustained relationship, to come with one another for something beneficial to all in service to a shared mutual loyalty. Some of the most ancient writings that we possess in humanity are covenants. Treaties written 4,000 years ago as covenants between city-states in ancient Acadia, that modern-day area now covered by Jordan and eastern Iraq. These ancient covenants spelled out what each city-state was to do to remain in right relationship and peace with the others. And this explains in part why covenants exist throughout Judeo-Christian scriptures. Recall the covenant Yahweh makes with Abraham in Genesis 15. First, just close your eyes for a moment and picture a night sky in a place not dominated by artificial light. some dark sky place where the stars seem numberless. This is the dark sky of Abraham's time. And Abraham is childless still when this episode takes place. And Yahweh brings Abraham outside and says, "Look towards the heaven and count the stars if you can. So shall your descendants be, countless." Yahweh says this to a man who has yet to have his first child. And although keeping covenants remain a chore, you might be pleased to know that making covenants is a little simpler than it used to be. We don't need to wait for Yahweh to come into our tent. In Genesis, this same episode has echoes surviving ancient rituals of how they established covenants across the entire ancient Near East. Because after this episode of Abraham looking at the dark sky, Yahweh tells Abraham to bring a heifer, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And Abraham is told to sacrifice all of these and to cut the larger animals in two, placing them a distance apart. This custom from ancient times is written about in other cultures because the parties agreeing to a covenant were to walk between the two halves of the sacrificed animals and to swear their agreements aloud in that middle space. And so Abraham, after he does what he's told, stands in that middle space, waiting for Yahweh to appear. There are less bloody covenants in Scripture, thank goodness. Consider the covenant to all humanity Yahweh makes after the great flood of Noah's time, a covenant whose sign is the rainbow. Ponder what a gift that something as beautiful as a rainbow has been imbued with sacred worth, a promise by God to not deploy holy anger to bring destruction again. And seeing a rainbow fills us with more than delight. It comforts us with a reassurance that seems divine. Indeed, human life is full of agreements, some merely assumptions about how we should relate to one another, like helping someone with limited mobility cross a street, holding a door for someone else passing through, and not jumping a red light to turn left. That always gets a laugh in New Jersey. Some covenants are composed, debated, and celebrated, like the U.S. Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. And Unitarian Universalism has covenants. Indeed, our 8 principles are composed deliberately in covenantal language. They read, and you can recite along with me from memory if you can. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. These covenants guide our life as a people of faith. James Luther Adams, Unitarian theologian and social ethicist, lived from 1901 to 1994, and he wrote eloquently about covenant. The following is adapted from Adam's The 5 Major Ingredients of Covenant. He writes, human beings individually and collectively become human by making commitment, by making promises. We are, as Martin Buber says, the promise-making, promise-keeping, promise-breaking, promise-renewing creatures. Covenant is a covenant of being. It is a covenant with one another and with the creative, sustaining, commanding, judging, transforming powers which some call divine. In a religious covenant, the orientation is to something we cannot control, but something upon which we depend, even for our freedom. 3, the covenant is for the individual as well as the collective. We are responsible for individual behavior, but also for the character of society at large. Our covenantal responsibility, number 4, is especially directed toward the deprived, whether these be people suffering from neglect and injustice or those caught in systems that oppress. And lastly, number 5, the covenant of being includes a rule of law, but it is not fundamentally legal. It depends upon faithfulness, and faithfulness is enlivened by loyalty and by love. Violation of the covenant is a violation of trust. What holds the world together is trustworthiness, commitment, and love. So he concludes, ultimately the ground of faithfulness is the love that will not let us go. Here is a theological basis for covenant and accountability. Many covenants claim us. The covenant of being just shared, it's expressed in many different ways in the world's great religions. You might recognize some of these. We are our brother's keepers, Yahweh suggests to Cain in Genesis. Defend the orphan, plead for the widow, sings the prophet Isaiah. Christianity commands us to treat others the way you want them to treat you. The Quran requires us to give 2.5% of our wealth, not our income, our wealth, to charity every year. And additional charitable giving is expected for those with greater means. Jains, Sikhs, Buddhists all have similar covenants of generosity and a deep concern for the needy, the sick, the immigrant, the oppressed. We can see that these, like the covenant of being, bring us closer to creating fair and equitable societies while following a faith that we can claim as worthy of our best. Our congregation's mission is a covenant, not only with our souls, with the holy and one another, but with the entire world. Grounded in faith, we come together to nurture the soul, inspire hope, and bring into being a more just and loving world. Our congregation deploys covenants in this way and in many other ways. Covenant groups, small ministry sharing circles that employ covenants to guide how they will interact. Your board of trustees uses a covenant to guide its relationships. Many committees and teams do the same. And sometimes behavioral covenants are established here between parties when conflict arises and it's unclear how to proceed and to restore relationship. With a covenant, all parties agree to abide by their promises regardless of what the other party does. Sometimes covenants outline what we will do, and sometimes covenants set boundaries about what we will not do. Covenants are often used, and we're not aware we're using them. And covenants are often used, and we're not aware that we're breaking them. Consider some behaviors that might be out of covenant. In the place I formerly served, there was no storage as sadly there is not much storage in this facility. And one day a man on the facilities team literally left an air hockey table in front of the only door to the building. And the night before, he and I sat around the same table discussing plans to build a shed attached to the back of the building to store tables and chairs and religious education materials because we didn't have any storage. So upon my gentle inquiry as to why he would place an air hockey table, which he said might not work, by the way, right in front of the only door to the building, he said, well, I thought the kids might like it. But we had no social hall in that particular facility, and our kids, like here, are there about 90 minutes a week, and they're in classes. And then he asked if he could bring a pool table, too. No process, no shared ministry. And I could only help but wonder, is cluelessness out of covenant? I don't know. But many other behaviors are more seriously out of covenant and damaging, and we know what they are. Racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, all of that stuff. Just being crass and mean, you know. But covenants have the power to unlock deeper commitment. I once served on a chalice lighters team, a Unitarian Universalist program that awards grants to congregations. We reviewed grant applications and awarded grants through a lengthy process of checks and balances. I was new to the faith then and had served on few committees. In one meeting, we had fewer applications than we had grants to give. So it seemed pretty easy, right? Still, the meeting dragged on for hours. And I became just a little bit frustrated. And never happens to me in long meetings that I think should have been over. I never get that way. And so I said to the chair, Ira Lerner, a wonderful man, can't we just award them all and go home? And Ira had said to me, he said, we have a legal and a sacred covenant. He actually said it like that, to assure the process is fair, and that's the same for all. Trust me, this is necessary. So I trusted him. A year later, a congregation we had awarded a grant to was accused of fraud, and part of it included the chalice lighter grant. And our chalice lighter records were subpoenaed. And since our team, thanks to Ira, had followed our covenant, making sure our T's were crossed and our I's were dotted, we were able to show there was no fraud. So yes, covenants save lives, reputations, and even money. Some of our covenants with one another get expressed in ways that are actionable and even legalistic. Many are vital for a functional, safe, healthy society. And one such group of covenants are the regulations collectively referred to as public health and safety. We are all very aware of the need for public health and safety over these last 20 months, are we not? COVID-19 has made us much more familiar with the need for civic authorities to regulate communities to prevent mass death and illness. And sadly, we see partisans and knaves ignore these guidelines, endangering everyone. The catastrophic collapse in June of the condominium in Surfside, Florida, renewed our awareness of the need to enforce building codes. Did you see that building just collapse with all those people? It was awful. And it reminded us how greed and neglect can make us ignore the danger we literally live within. But there's another public health issue that I'm very familiar with. In fact, Laura, could you bring me that home Bible that I asked you to bring to me for this part of the reading? So this, in case you've never had a chance to read it cover to cover, it's fascinating. It's the National Electrical Code, known in law as NFPA 70. And this is the public health covenant that I understand better than any other. So I'll read a little bit of this scripture to you today, because you probably haven't had a chance to read it for a while. So, that's right, it comes from Article 250. Article 250, and this is on grounding.
Reverend Scott, you might want to remind the good people that you're an electrician.
Well, for those who don't know, in my former life, I made my living as an electrician. Hi. Yes. And I think someone here has a lot of electricity that they have no problem letting us see. It's all good. So from the Bible known as the NEC, Article 250, verse 1, electrical system grounding. Electrical systems that are grounded shall be connected to earth in a manner that will limit the voltage imposed by lightning, line surges, or unintentional contact with higher voltage lines, and that will stabilize the voltage to earth during normal operations. Yeah, it's just beautiful. Materials enclosing conductors shall be connected to earth. Connected to earth. You might have to finish, Anya. I'm a little verklempt.
Just to add, that was in our vow of marriage.
To remain connected to earth and be grounded. But seriously, folks, living in a spirit of covenant with an abiding desire to stay in relationship is central to human thriving. It's a hallmark of congregational life and a prerequisite for beloved community. Covenants exist in so many areas of our lives, and some of them, like many in our community, are explicit. We compose, revise, recite, and we post them even on the walls sometimes, right? We revisit them when we must, employing them to nurture and restore relationships, as in the story from Genesis. We know that covenants can help us walk in that middle space between chaos and tyranny. And it proclaims our duties and our relationships, so we better know how to walk our talk. Many important covenants, however, are merely assumed, and therefore they can be difficult to follow. Some of these implicit covenants may seem self-evident, and they require special attention. Consider the covenant that we have with our descendants, what Americans' founders called our posterity. Do we not have a sacred obligation to our descendants, to our children's children's children, to leave behind a society, a culture, a planet that is better, kinder, cleaner, more just and safe than the one into which we were born? Do we not have a sacred duty to assure that 1,000 years from today that we might be hailed as good ancestors? Imagine that time is a river, and here we stand in this moment knowing that all we are was made possible by our ancestors upstream. And I urge us to ponder that river, to dream downstream through time. First imagining, then fashioning together the world we know can be if we but follow the better angels of our nation, honoring our sacred covenant with our descendants, our posterity, to make all the world's communities beloved, all the world and all living things cherished. Amen. Will you reflect with me? How might we better hold one another in safety, challenge, and love in covenant? Covenants exist to maintain, manage, and restore relationship, living in a spirit of covenant with an abiding desire to stay in relationship is central to human thriving, a hallmark of congregational life, and a prerequisite for beloved community. We are promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing creatures, openly walking together in that middle space between chaos and tyranny. So do your best to honor your covenants, especially the implied ones, and endeavor to dream downstream through time as we promise to be good ancestors whose stories can be told in tales of honor by our posterity a millennium from now. Amen.
Anyone wants to borrow the electrical code, you're welcome to come forward after the service. Let's take a quick moment to thank our tech team. Fabulous work. I think we've got Debbie Ann and Wallace and Connor up there. And it's a beautiful day today. If you'd like to join us outside, we will meet and greet and connect. And then we have Connection Cafe through these doors at 11:30.
That's what I did when we did it virtual.
Yeah, I remember. That's really great. Nice contrast. I did notice that one. Yeah. But I was like, this is Americans instead of American. Oh, that one I didn't get. This is so bizarre. But I'm not. Oh my God. 2 or 3 times before I eat. But anytime we get to pull out the code book, I'm at.
Well, this guitar is just fine.
Just what?
It's fine. It's great.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Plays great. Sounds great.
Yeah, I love playing it.
Mark S1.
Yeah, I got it. The guitar we got some damage on the finish. It's definitely fine. I mean, it's 6 years old now, but I got it for like 6 months.
That's awesome. Great job. I mean, what a sound.
Oh, great.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Wonderful, both of you. Yay. Avron, 10 minute review.
I left the drink over there if you want.
Oh, good. You don't want to take it home?
Yeah, that's unmistakably Morton right there.
Yeah, there was a
Beautiful, beautiful sound.
time about, it might have been 7 or 8 years ago, and there was a memorial service, and somebody, donated like $1,000 to the congregation. Charlie Watson said to me, hey, you need money, what do you want to buy? I said, oh, I want to buy it. And because, that was only $600, I was able to buy a wireless.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you had it put in there?
Did you?
This thing.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, no, the pickup is still.
Pickup's built in.
No, the pickup came with it. And that was one of the main things I wanted, because I knew I wanted to amplify it.
Right.
For the sanctuary. And I love the way it sounds through the pickup, because a lot of times those pickups sound really tinny or not very warm, but this one's great.
No, it's great. That amp's awesome. So
Yeah, that's definitely great. I used to play it